realistically, the story that I was interested in telling was one of my fathers. You know, just like everyone else, we look up to our fathers more than anyone. My father to this day is my idol. It's pretty cool having someone who's happens to be one of the greatest rugby league players of all time as your father. I wanted to celebrate him as well as celebrate rugby league.
This is a big one, guys. Today on the show, we have Mark Graham. In 2007, Mark was named New Zealand's Player of the Century. He's an NRL Hall of Famer and former New Zealand Warriors coach. Just as exciting is that we also have Luke Graham, who is Mark's son and a genuinely gifted filmmaker. We record this podcast in the lead up to the release of Sharko, a moving film made by Luke about his father. We hope you enjoy.
Well, I used to get paid by the minute when I went to Brisbane. It was $2 a minute, and that's one. Yeah. There's one game there we played and I got badly cut, so I needed like 63 stitches. They were $10 a stitch, and I played for 15 minutes, so I owed them money at the end of the day.
Yes, that's right. We have super talented filmmaker Luke Graham on the show with New Zealand Rugby League Player of the Century and Hall of Famer Mark Graham. Mark, Luke, thanks for coming on the show.
Nice to be here, Keith.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's been one that I've been looking forward to for many weeks now. And Stuart, you're keeping well, my trusty co-host?
Yeah, I'm keeping very well, and I'm very excited to chat with Luke and Mark. I've watched the documentary and very impressed, and also brings me back to old days at North Sydney Oval watching Mark Plate go around with the Bears. So very exciting. I'll start with you Luke. You asked your dad in Sharko why he was participating in the documentary, and he said basically to help you out. Why did you make the documentary on your dad, Mark?
Well, in filmmaking, you've got to find stories that you believe in. And to be honest, even when we'd spoken, I'd finished a previous film called Broke. And this is how long this has taken, because we've been through COVID and a few other things, and there's been a few hiccups with the film. There's always challenges with things, raising money, etc. And Dad had been talking to me about the about the 1977 Auckland team. He was going back to do a reunion with them, for a reunion in Auckland to celebrate the team who had beaten Great Britain, the Kangaroos, and France. And these were all just guys that were part-timers and amateurs. And obviously a lot of the team went on to be the Kiwi team throughout the 80s. And Dad said, come back home with me and catch up with everyone. And obviously I was a child last time I saw a lot of these people. And it was amazing to catch up with a lot of the people, and especially like people like Olsen, Philip Piner, who I hadn't seen in a long time. And I'd grown up with his family, his kids, etc. And it was amazing to see. But realistically, the story that I was interested in telling was one of my fathers. You know, just like everyone else, we look up to our fathers more than anyone. My father to this day is my idol. And it's pretty cool having someone who's happens to be one of the greatest rugby league players of all time as your father. And I wanted to celebrate him as well as celebrate rugby league, which, two things that I love.
Yeah, great answer. I'll keep with you, Luke. Had premiere screenings in the USA and Australia in Brisbane. What has been the feedback for the film so far?
Well, we had our world premiere at Dock Edge, it's at Christchurch. So, and that was in late June, early July where we had that. And we were very lucky for that one because that's one of the Oscar qualifying film festivals in the Southern Hemisphere. So we're very lucky we won an award at that. And we had a lot of people come in and give positive feedback. But it's been great. Obviously, I don't think anyone realistically, Stuart and Keith, is going to give you some bad feedback when they come to a screening of your film. So we've been very lucky everyone's been very positive. I will say I don't know if anyone's going to say bad things to you, but it's been a great experience considering that we've been at an arty film festival, which is Dock Edge. We went to the States recently, which is people who don't even have a clue. The festival director, when he contacted me and said, we got given your film, I have no idea what this sport is, but I love the story and I thought it was amazing and I cried. So that was great to have that audience there, and a lot of obviously Americans. It was different for them, and they were very positive. But to have it at Queensland, we played at the Brisbane International Film Festival last week, and Dad was there. It was the first time he'd seen it on a big screen, and he had a lot of his friends and colleagues from the past that were there, and it was great to have them there. And obviously, I'm I'm nervous and scared every time an audience watches it, because you're obviously putting yourself out there as a filmmaker, but we're in front of the camera as well, telling a story, and it doesn't get any easier. I mean, it's always uncomfortable, but I'm hopefully people enjoy it and resonate with it. The story resonates with them.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Mark, as we talked about, you said you participated in Sharko to help Luke. Now that you've seen it on the big screen, what is your feelings about the documentary from your personal point of view?
Oh, look, I thought Luke did a wonderful job, except that he could have made me look better. I think he could. I keep looking at it thinking, geez, who's that ugly old puff? And it's me. So, yeah, he could have most probably given me a mask or something to wear. But other than that, no, I think he's done a wonderful job. He's had a good time doing it. I've had no input whatsoever except for the 8 or 9 hours I've spent in a tin shed with him talking to me. And we would have got it done in half that time, but it rained, so the sound was no good. So we had to go and do it again the next day. So, but yeah, he's done a really good job. And I think having watched it on the big screen for the first time, I was very impressed.
Oh, I'm impressed too. I will be raving from the rafters about this. I watched it this morning for anyone listening out there, and I'll tell you what, as an hour and a half, I was just captivated and completely drawn in. But the next question, I'll come back to you, Luke. You were the producer of another film, this one called Broke. This one's centered around a rugby league player as well. What is it about footy films, and are you still a big fan of the sport?
Oh, yeah, it's a massive fan. The problem is the team I go for doesn't exist in the NRL at the moment and hasn't existed for a long time. So it's very difficult. And when they got kicked out, a lot of my friends, and I went to Holy Cross at Ryde, and a lot of my friends are Tigers. So I sadly had to choose the Tigers. And boy, that was good at the start. That was good for a few years at the start, and it's been very miserable ever since. So it's rugby league. Rugby league for me is it's a sport that's been in my family for a long time, and it's something that's so close to me. And it was something that I was so happy to represent. There's can you name many rugby league documentaries that are made for cinema and made for international audiences? I certainly can't. And it was something that it was just easy to go, it's what I love, and I think is an amazing sport, one of the best in the world. And I really wanted to push it and get it out there to the world. And Dad was very lucky enough to say yes and deal with that. But yeah, with Broke was a project we did prior, and I know that when Dad, so Broke was basically Dad's interaction with Broke was that I was doing this documentary. I was doing this feature film, and I was up in Gladstone, and I said, Dad, I'm going to make this film, and I'm going to use old footage of yourself in it. So you'll be, when you play for the Bears, say early 80, 81, 82 season, where the Bears were really good in 82. And they were very unlucky not to get to the grand final, but they obviously had some really good teams. And I said, Dad, I'm going to use some old footage of you playing for the Bears as this character's kind of who he was. And we had Steve Lamarquin playing the lead. And we had some amazing actors, and Steve, one of them. So Steve played this, he was a drunk, he was a druggo gambler, and he kind of all these extreme elements. And obviously in that time when we were filming it and releasing it, there had been a few players that happened to had gone through similar things, were ex-players that were going through it. So it was good timing for the film, I'll say that. We obviously none of that time was, we didn't mean to kind of time or any of that. But with Broke, Dad's interaction with that was everyone thought that I was telling the story of my father, who was, so Dad, so Mark, you're into gambling and drinking and like all these things like this. Because my father's, my father's always been, he's Catholic. He still takes care of himself to say, if I went to his house and stayed at his house, the expectation is we'd be up in the next morning training together, and it's eating right. And those are all those things that Dad's kind of he's instilled into his kids, and that's who he is. So no, my dad's the complete opposite of that character. We just kind of, it was an interesting story to tell about someone. And I just happened to have, hey, I've got footage of my dad. I've got we use Dad's jerseys in it and stuff with Dad's stuff in it. And I just it was just, hey, I want to celebrate Dad. But yeah, he had a lot of people that harassed him about.
They didn't harass me like the guys I play golf with on Saturday mornings. They'd say, come, let's go and have a drink. And I go, oh, no, I'm not going to go. Come on, punt. And I'm going, I'm not going to punt. And they go, well, hang on. You know, you were this drunkard gambler. That wasn't me. And up until about 4 weeks ago, my neighbour down the street came up and he said, mate, I just can't tell you how pleased I am to see you turn your life around. I said, what are you talking about? That moving. I said, no, that wasn't about me, you idiot. Anyway.
Yeah, so yeah, it was just, but obviously rugby league is something that I'd love to. No one else is doing it, so I'm more than happy to tell those stories, and as long as I can.
Yeah, well, we're really glad that you are, and also I want to say I've been on that same journey with you with Balmain and Team West Tigers, and it's not a fun one, is it? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, but the thing is,
here you go. He watched this series.
The thing is, you're a fan, and fan is short for fanatic, and,
Yep.
and fanatics don't have to make a lot of sense except to themselves, so it's okay.
yeah.
Well, I want to tell you this, guys, as well, and I follow a bit of NFL as well in the States, and the Detroit Lions. I follow Detroit in American sports as well, so I followed them because they were the blue collar team, the Detroit Pistons and Detroit Lions, and for so many years the Detroit Lions were terrible, and it was actually made my life pleasurable to know how bad they were, and I got pleasure in the pain, and for the last 2 or 3 years, they've been amazing. Like they played last week, and the game was over by the end of the first quarter. And I got to say, it's pretty boring when your team's really good. So
I'd like to be bored just occasionally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark, I spent a couple of years when I was a kid in Wellington, New Zealand. My dad went over there for work, and I was there. And back in Sydney, rugby league was obviously big, and I played and all that sort of thing. But in New Zealand, I was playing union, and there was a couple of guys on the team whose dads worked on the wharves, and they talked about rugby league, and it was almost talked about like it was an underground cult thing. You just didn't see it in that time. And I'm talking a long way back. How did you take up the game in Auckland?
Oh, well, I went to St Joseph's Convent School in Otahuhu, and the local footy club, local rugby league club gave them footy jerseys. And so that's how I got captivated by the sport. And I very rarely played rugby union. I played rugby union 1 year in my schooling because I'd missed my university entrance when I sat for it. So I went back to school the next year and I played first 15 and I got it accredited, which I was pretty happy about. And actually, that was the year I made my first representative game. I'd never been picked previously in any representatives for rugby league, but I played 1 year of rugby union and made the rep, so I was pretty happy with that.
Okay, that's it's very unusual for a New Zealander to say I rarely played rugby union.
Yeah,
because it was certainly huge when I was there, and rugby league seems to have come on in leaps and bounds since then, which is great. But
it's rugby league apparently is they're killing it at the moment over here. And when you look at the amount of Kiwis, or sorry, shall we say, people with New Zealand passports that are playing in the NRL, it would be over 50% or around the 50% mark comfortably, I'd say. So there's a lot of talent here.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a story that my wife's grandma, Joyce, told once. She said, I used to work in a hospital in Napier, and there was this girl, and she was dating an All Black, and she got fed up with how much time he was spending with the All Blacks and training. So she gave him an ultimatum. It's me or the All Blacks. So I'm sure this was the 50s or something like that. I don't think she understood just how big the All Blacks were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, sticking with you though, Mark. Graham Lowe, one of the most famous Kiwi coaches ever, if not the most famous, played a big role in your rugby league career and gets plenty of time in Sharko. Just how significant was his influence on you?
Yeah, hugely. And when I got put in the NRL Hall of Fame, I thanked him, in my speech. He was someone that believed in me, and I believed in him. And we spent countless hours talking about rugby league and how to play it, and different plays and moves, and so we both had a huge attraction to the game. And he was certainly a pivotal person in my development for sure. And he was a great bloke and a great friend, and I was very privileged to be able to meet him in the first place, I suppose.
Mm. Back to you, Luke. Sharko is much more. We've talked about this, but Sharko is much more than a rugby league documentary. How much is it for you about families, tragedies, including your brother's death, and father-son relationships in particular?
Well, they all go. Football. I look at football like like any sport. And I think you kind of say it partly in their dad is. I think football is like a microcosm for life. So, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have chances to win, chances to lose. You're going to be tested throughout the process. And sport is an amazing way to connect with an audience visually. But it was really important for me to have a documentary which didn't just connect on that kind of, I guess, shine level, that really first just keep it surface level. I really wanted something that would kind of draw you in and kind of talk about those things that we all feel. And I know that we all like to feel like we're different. We're all going through different things, but we're all very, very similar. We all go through the same things. So it was really important for the documentary to have that depth that yeah, sports is important, but families just as important, if not more. And both of them together can be an amazing thing, and they go hand in hand.
Definitely. Mark, over to you. Playing with the North Sydney Bears in the 1980s, what was it like considering that the club made the finals just the one time in 1982? And was that tough? And I guess, how did you deal with the attention being a star player in Sydney?
I really enjoyed playing at the Bears. They were my friends. That's the reason I played, because they were playing with me mates. I had plenty of offers to go elsewhere, but they were my friends. They were the people. If I was going to go good and we were going to win comps or we were going to be successful, I wanted to be with them doing it. So they were sort of like my footballing family, in Sydney. And to this day, if I go to Sydney, I can go and stay with any number of them. We communicate often. What it was like being a star, there's sort of like a term, like to be in a sports where a team sport, you need other people to be on the same wavelength as you. So I was very fortunate that I played with lots of good players, and they, you can't look good unless someone else is giving you the ball in the right spot. So there's lots of other good players that maybe didn't get the attention that I got.
Did you ever climb that famous tree at North Sydney Oval that I used to try and climb when I was younger?
The Moreton Bay.
The Moreton Bay fig.
No, I never did, but it still stands today. So it's still, people are still in it. They still get good crowds to their home games, the Bears, although they're playing in the New South Wales Rugby League. And I think this is the second year in a row they've played in the grand final, but they've lost both times. But pretty good effort to still be going around and going good.
Staying on the field with you, Mark, and this comes across a lot in Sharko. As a threat to the opposition, you were targeted on the field both at club and international level. Was that something that worried you at the time?
No, I think it's you could use that to your advantage. I had always played with people that could look after. When I was looking one way, they'd look the other for me. The people that were your backup, and there was in those areas you needed people that were maybe not as good at the footballing, but good at looking after people. So each team would have had a player that was, if you left them on the park, they were going to hurt your chances of winning. So it was just how it was. And if I carried the ball and if I got the ball when I wanted it, there's and 3 or 4 people charged at me to tackle me. Well, I just pass it to someone because it was going to be space somewhere. And if they put one bloke on me, then I'd try and beat them or sand in the tackle and then offload the ball. So it was kind of an advantage if you took the ball sometimes, especially early on, and you just crashed into everyone. And they thought, well, he's going to do that all day, and they're going to try and hurt you. And then after that, you just pass the ball all the time, and lots of things can happen for you. So I was lucky that and have to be able to pass the ball to someone running into space. Certainly makes me look good. But if I'd passed the ball and there was no one running into space, I'd look pretty stupid. So again, good players around you help, obviously.
This is a question not on the run sheet, but how tall are you? In the film, you look so tall.
No, look, I was only ever about 6'3", I think. I'm a bit shorter now, and 6'3" was about more. Yeah, I was tall. That was all I was. But I was kind of at home we had a lot of people that were short and stocky, so tall and lean was most probably a disadvantage in those days until I could play for 80 minutes and I could run for 80 minutes, and so that was an advantage. So when I went to Australia, there was a lot more people like that. So even nowadays, I think you'd have your yardage men and they're short and stocky, but the longer and leaner bloke now is making a bit of a comeback athletically. They can stay on the field longer limbs, harder to control with the ball, better reach. So I suppose there's an advantage to all. I mean, you look at the short, stocky player. One that just stands out to me is, well, two. Kevin Tarmany, he was very hard to stop, and also Filipana. So if you try to attack those two physically, you were going to come second. So you had to come up with another way of tackling them, because if you confronted them aggressively, you were not going to win.
Yeah, Kevin Tarmany was very hard to fight too, as Greg Dowling found.
Yeah, that wasn't Greg Dowling's smartest move, I reckon.
Hey, what did it mean to represent your country and beat the Kangaroos, such as that day at Carlock Park in 1985?
Yeah, look, that was the holy grail of Test football. The Kangaroos on Carlock Park in a packed stadium, and we'd lost 2 Test matches prior, and only just lost, and we'd actually thought that we knew we were a good side, but we hadn't beaten Australia. We got beat by a late try in the first Test, and a very late try. Yeah, from a forward. No, in the second Test from a forward pass for sure. The most grievous part about it was an Auckland line umpire that didn't rule the forward pass against them and ruled against us in the forward pass. So that sort of obviously hurt. But we thought we would let everyone down. But Graham, being the genius he is, he decided that we were going to walk up Queen Street on the Friday prior to the Test, and no one wanted to go because we thought the people just lost faith in us. And it turned out to be one of the great motivational things that he did. He was very much into motivation. He told the local radio stations that we were going to walk down Queen Street, and it was just marvellous. People were coming out of the shops and patting us on the back, and it was just like, wow, these people believe in us. So one of the good things that Mark Elia, one of the members of the side, he said on the way to the ground, he said, do you reckon we should go over after we've been announced, because it's different now, but used to get run out one at a time and get announced in a crowded chair. And we all lined up and we ran over as a group and we waved to the crowd and thanked them and clapped them, and we ran back to the railway side of the grandstand and clapped them. And it was just the feeling was invincibility, And I think they kicked the ball off and I dropped it straight up. So I'm very pleased that Luke managed to find that and put that in for me.
Very, very easy to find that footage. Very easy.
That brings me to a good point in my next question for you, Luke. You mentioned in Sharko how your dad was your idol and your Superman, and I had the same thing as a kid growing up. My dad was my idol, my Superman, but as you get older, you do see a few sort of flaws and
You should see him play golf.
Yeah. So my question, I suppose, is he still your idol and your Superman, or have you sort of come to a different level, or
No, I would still say that still say the same. To be honest, it's I don't think I wouldn't have made the documentary without those thoughts. It's really really hard to make films. This isn't America. This is Australia and New Zealand aren't countries where it is a profitable business to make content, especially in 2024. It's possibly one of the worst jobs you can kind of start in the media game. So it was something that was, yes, it was something that I was very aware of, and to this day, my father's opinion was the one that was most important to me on the documentary. So
yeah, definitely. You interviewed a number of former rugby league stars from both sides of the ditch for the film. You probably won't be honest about this anyway, but did anyone have a bad word to say about Mark?
No. To be honest, no. Everyone was actually quite kind. Like everyone was. That's the good thing about and I can't speak of rugby league players now. I don't really know anyone now. Everyone rugby league's associated with that era and dad's friends and colleagues. But that's what they were. They were kind of like Blocker Roach. Blocker was his job, and I think in two of the games, two of the tests in the documentary, Blocker's job was to knock that out of the game, and he did in two of the games. But Blocker in the documentary was who handed Daddy's jacket at the NRL Hall of Fame, and who was that person? And he said to me when we sat down, he actually lives very close to where you used to live in Sydney. He lives in Ryde, and he said I wouldn't have done the documentary. I wouldn't have done this interview if it wasn't your father. And I've got as much time in the world for him as possible. So and these are people that their job was to put him in hospital. So it's an amazing thing to be able to be able to want to kill someone, for 80 minutes, and then afterwards want to go have a beer with them. And it's an amazing time, and I don't know if it's like that anymore, but I know that's what it was, and for me that was always an amazing to be around that.
Yeah, Blocker actually gave a term to it, didn't he? I've forgotten what he called it when you go out to
The chopping block.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. From was it Ron Willie or someone like that gave it, or Frank Stanton? I can't remember, but anyway, Mark. In some ways, you were the prototype for what became the modern back rower, as far as your body type and the way you played. To me, you probably played a bit wider in those days than a lot of back rowers. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it just depended on what part of the footy field I was in. So I used to play through the middle when we got a free kick down there at the end of the park. As we came out, 30, 40 metres, I'd go a little bit wider so I could attack their centre and their half.
Yeah.
And down, I didn't take a lot of ball and yardage, but I was about creating space and people backing up, and so I suppose I don't know. See, the modern game, as I see, you have edge back rowers, and the people who do the yardage are mostly the outside backs from kicks, obviously, and the forwards hardly ever carry the ball in yardage now from kicks and that sort of stuff, unless it's a kick off. So, and I don't know if I never played on a side of the field where now you have a right side forward and a left side forward, but it didn't matter to me. I was just playing where the space was. Yeah, I just can't tell you the last time I saw an edge back row offload the ball, and that's all I was trying to ever do. So it's all about nowadays. It's like not making mistakes, whereas we would have made plenty, but there was opportunities around that too.
Yeah.
So I think the game's got very sanitized now. Everybody plays the same way, and just whoever the referee decides has made a mistake gets the advantage. Or doesn't get the advantage. So it's quite a different game now. To be able to play for 20 minutes, have 20 minutes off, have half time off, have the next 20 minutes off, and then come back for 20 minutes and still get paid. Well, I used to get paid by the minute when I went to Brisbane. It was $2 a minute, and that's if you won. Yeah. It was one game there we played, and I got badly cut, so I needed like 63 stitches. They were $10 a stitch, and I played for 15 minutes, so I owed them money at the end of the day. So,
oh no!
That's how it was. That's what footy was, And, it's amazing now that blokes. See, in the old days, if you didn't take the field, if they didn't use the two replacements you had, if they didn't, first of all, to be a replacement, you had to have played a full game in under 23s.
I remember that.
Indoor reserve grade.
Yeah,
and then you could stand by. So, and if you didn't take the field in a winning match, you didn't get paid for a winning match because you didn't take the field. So you had people that got picked for Australia in the old days, in the 60s and maybe early 70s, that didn't take the field, and they never got a jersey. They never got a cap. Nowadays you can get a debut off the bench.
Yeah,
and it's just wow. So things have changed. To think that you can play 20 minutes, the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes of the game, and not only get a full match payment, but get a cap for having played the game. It's quite, things have changed a lot.
Absolutely, yeah,
definitely. One of the areas that's changed a lot was the fact that the 80s were fairly wild in terms of what was tolerated on the field. What are your views on the game now, with particular emphasis on player safety?
Look, I'm very pleased it's happened. To see some mates of mine that have, bad things have happened to them because of what happened on the football field is dead set crying shame, and not only for them but their families, which the families obviously looking after them, and it's obviously making life very difficult for them. So it's a terrible thing. But as I said to my wife, like if that ever happens to me, I'll be pretty good because I won't know anything about it. I'll just be off in La La Land.
Luke won't be too good, but
yeah. Well, So but it's a terrible thing, and I'm pleased they've doing something about it. But I'd really like to say that when people go down holding their neck and they're just bunging it on to get a penalty, they should have to go to the sideline, and they're not allowed to play until the doctor clears them again. So if you're going to go down and pull that on, we're going to end up looking like bloody soccer.
I agree.
You go down with a neck injury, or you go down fainting a neck injury. Well, guess what? You got to go to the sideline, and the doctor might only be off the field for a couple of minutes, or a minute, or a set, but you've got to miss the next set before you can be replaced. Let's see how good you go then. Because it used to be a real hard game for real hard people, and that's to the detriment of the game. It was those standards were put in place. So Jim Coleman's, when I was in Sydney in the early 80s, he was the guy that they charged with getting, he was suspending people for 18 months at a time, a year at a time for what they did. And maybe rightly so, but, up until he stepped up, it was just, that's what happened. It was just how things were. So I'm pleased that they're doing something. I just wish that, I don't know, I wish they wouldn't bung it on, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mark, you had a couple of years coaching the Auckland Warriors in 1999 and 2000. Did you enjoy coaching?
I loved it. Yeah, I'd done 7 years as an assistant coach prior to that. I was at Manly, the Bears, and the Cowboys, and I loved coaching. It was great. And then I went to the Warriors, and wonderful young fellas, good men. We had a lot of guys leave when I got the job, and I took the job because we had so many Kiwis. But by the time I got to our first training session, most of them had left. So we struggled. I had lots of young guys, lots and lots of young guys. Like I was playing 6 and 7 blokes that never played first grade footy and never played reserve grade footy in Sydney before. So and they would make one mistake each, and they were marvellous athletes, and one mistake each, and there were 6 of them playing. Well, that's 6 tries, so you're getting beat pretty comfortably. And I was trying to explain to the newspaper then, and the media people, that these kids were going to be really good. And I think 2 years after maybe a year or 2 years after I resigned from the Warriors, they were playing in the grand final. All those kids were playing. So, that was really gratifying for me to see that come through. Yeah, so like the final year of my contract with the Warriors, I had my 6 and 7 were out for the whole year, pretty much. They played 6 games together for the whole year, and of those, maybe 7 games, and of those 7 games, 14 points we could have won if they'd have won them all. We won 12. We won 12 points. So having them on the park together was obviously a huge bonus, and now it's if you're 6 or 7 are out, you're going to lose. That's how it is. So. Yeah, but I loved it. I went from there and I went and coached at Auckland Rugby Union and met some wonderful people. B.G. Williams I got to know well, and Mark Anscombe was the coach there also. Yeah, it was great. I went and did some coaching with John Kerwin, who's my cousin, and we went up to Italy, and he was coaching Italy, and I went up there to do some work with them. And then while I was up there, I signed for Kintetsu. The Kintetsu line is a Japanese club side, and went and lived in Japan and coached there for a couple of years. So it was great. I really enjoyed my time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
That's amazing. Luke, what would you like the viewers to take away from Sharko?
Well, firstly, I'd like them to watch it many, many times at the cinema and just bring random people in that they don't know. Almost force them to come in. Just random people and just lie to them. Say it's a new Marvel movie and say it's awesome and just come in, and it's too late once we've got your money. So you can leave. I don't care. No, in all honesty, I'd like them to, I know who our audience is. And this is made for me and for them. I'd like them to look back at a time in rugby league when it was a special time for rugby league. The 80s were the start of where we are now. It had so many amazingly talented human beings, and I'd like them to look back fondly at someone who's so important to me, and look back at a story of family which is relatable to them.
That sounds good. We get to the important part of the chat now, which is my food question. I ask a food question on every podcast just because I'm so into food. So what I need from both of you is favourite cuisine and favourite dish.
Well, that's pretty easy.
Gee. Okay, you go first because I'm thinking.
Favourite cuisine? Well, I would probably say and this is actually my favourite cuisine was introduced. I obviously, Dad and I am not much darker. My mother's Italian, Sicilian. So heritage. So I love my food, and I go traveling everywhere based on food. And my father was the first person, when Dad used to live in Sydney when I was a teenager, he took me to my first Japanese restaurant. And it was a teppanyaki place, and I still remember it. I had sashimi for the first time, miso soup, and we had some amazing food. Japanese is my most favorite cuisine.
Good answer.
Yeah, gee, I like them all. hard to distinguish. I like raw fish, and I cook I make a good raw fish.
Yep.
But seafood, yeah, pretty good. I like seafood. Gee.
A cuisine.
That's cuisine. Like, so you're talking. Okay. All right. Well, you've just obviously took my one.
It's okay to say. It's okay.
You can double up. You can
It's
double
okay
up.
to say.
Yeah, no,
Have
I
a
think
son.
I like Thai. I like Thai's very
Right,
nice.
Good
too.
answer.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Good, nice, tasty food. Healthy, good for you. Yeah.
Pad Ki Mao. That's where it's at. The Pad Ki Mao, or that's what I usually get. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Pad See you beef.
I like it all actually. Yeah, there's not much I don't like.
just throw it
Yeah.
all in.
As long as there's plenty of.
Well, I'm just on that one. In Brisbane, in Sunnybank's got some amazing food, and I always kind of go to my Thai haunt, which is called I Thai in Brisbane, Sunnybank.
Okay.
I recommend that for everyone. Harass them; they got some great food.
Yep. All right.
There you
Sounds
go.
good.
Love that. Love that. Luke, tell us about the program ahead for Sharko and how our listeners can see the film.
Well, yeah, please. So we're over here in NZ at the moment, and we're releasing in cinemas on the 7th of November. So that's pretty key because in the modern world, independent films like this here get very little opportunity to kind of get a life in the cinema. They give every opportunity to those Marvel films, which seem to be getting worse and worse, and the story's getting worse and worse and more boring and boring. And they spend $200 million on it and make 50 back, and they still don't get the picture. So the cinemas support them, but realistically, it's the way that we get a chance over here is that if New Zealanders come out and check it out, and it lasts longer over here in cinemas. And what we're going to be doing next is after New Zealand, we'll be having our Australian preview Q&A on the 26th of November, and that'll be at the Hayden Orpheum in Cremorne, which is obviously for the North Sydney family. So we'll have the North Sydney family at that, have a screening there, and then it'll be playing in cinemas in Australia afterwards. So not too sure how big the audience is going to be in the cinema in Australia, because Australia's sadly is not as supportive as New Zealand when it comes to indie films. They kind of like to stick with the big boys.
Mhm.
So we'll be doing our best, but if it plays well in New Zealand, it'll play well in Australia.
Brilliant.
Okay. And hopefully I can tag along to the one at the Orpheum.
Oh yeah, you guys! I think you guys are actually coming to the one at the Orpheum as well. So that'll be great. We've got some amazing support from everyone as well. The NRL will be there, which will be fun because I think they rejected the North Sydney Bears offer. So it'll be great to have the Bears and the NRL in the same room together. We could get a punch up. Could be
bringing mouth guards.
Yeah, that'd be exciting. That'd definitely be exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute blast so far, but we're actually out of questions. Is there anything that you guys want to add before we wrap up?
What's your most favorite food?
I've someone asked me the other day, what's your death row meal? So it's a slightly different spin on it.
What do you do?
I reckon I've got I reckon I've got peasant tastes, to be honest with you. I'd go sweet and sour pork with fried rice.
Okay,
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong.
Some dim sims on the side, nice fry up.
I spent 3.5 years in Greece, so I'm still attached to the Greek food. So yeah,
Seafood barbecue, seafood and
all of it. Yeah, gyros, the whole thing. Big fan of fresh food, meat and vegetables. So.
Way to really ram home how peasant my answer was, Stu. Thanks for that.
I do like sweet and sour pork too.
It's funny, I had that at the local leagues club, Magpies Leagues at Waitara, just on the weekend.
Oh, good on you.
Lucky Magpie.
Very good.
Stu, any last words?
No, but thank you very much for your time, Luke and Mark. Really, really appreciated you guys coming on and having a chat to us. Mark, as I said, great memories from me watching you. My dad always thought you were a fantastic player and said that to me. He said he actually the whole prototype for the modern player sort of came from him, because he said, Mark Graham's just that perfect player. So, and he always thought that. He played some second division for Penrith a long time ago. So yeah, he knew his footy and coached him as well. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Very kind of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Everything Rugby League. If you like this episode, give the show a follow and leave a review. For more news and insights, follow us on Facebook or head to everythingrugbyleague.com.